you have any concerns about that? Conservatives are down 10 points according to a Nanos poll. Any concerns? A new poll shows the Conservatives are down 10 points. Are you having any concerns about that? The Conservatives are down 10 points in a Nanos poll. Do you have any concerns about the Conservatives being down 10 points in the Nanos poll? Do you have any comment on that?
I just got a call.
What do you think about this poll?
Jess rang.
It's on silent. I know, it's the worst timing.
It didn't even ring. I'm so surprised.
It's on silent, but I felt it.
That might be the funniest clip I've ever seen on our show. That's Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer getting asked from our own producer Rachel Haynes about some new numbers from our pollster of record, Nik Nanos. The latest Nano research ballot tracking has the Tories 10 points behind the Liberals. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has just over half the support of Mark Carney when Canadians surveyed are asked to pick their preferred prime minister. It's a jarring turn for a party that ended the election neck and neck with the Liberals. Here to unpack those new numbers is Nik Nanos himself. He's the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Hi, Nick. Good to see you.
Hey, Vashi.
That was a great clip. I can't get over it. Andrew Scheer pretending to be on the phone because we want to talk about your numbers. So let's get into this, because the last time we spoke just a few weeks ago, you were making the point like, wow, they're still very close. They were like within a point in the few weeks that followed the election of each other. There didn't appear to be some big honeymoon for Prime Minister Mark Carney. What changed?
Well, actually, what we're seeing is the Carney government in motion to one extent or another, and Pierre Poilievre not being in the news as much as he has. You know, I don't think we can underestimate the disadvantage that he is at, because he's not in the House of Commons. He does not have that platform. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether you like or dislike the guy. Pierre Poilievre is an effective parliamentarian. That's why he's kind of built up his brand over the last number of years. And, you know, he's not there. He's not on the front line. And, you know, let's face it, who's on TV? Scheer is on TV, not Poilievre. And, you know, the thing is what's clear now, at least when we look at the tracking, you know, Pierre Poilievre is now 25 points back of Mark Carney when it comes to who Canadians would prefer as Prime Minister. And put this in context, Carney's up a little bit, but Pierre Poilievre is down significantly on the preferred Prime Minister tracking.
And let me ask you, you referenced this a little bit, but is that mostly from your perspective like a question of relevance versus a question of judgment? Like, is it necessarily people saying I don't like or what he's saying, or is it more just that I'm not listening to it the way I was a few months ago because they were so...
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's not in the news.
Right.
And he doesn't have the platform, right? And, you know, the thing is, you know, the interesting thing is during the election campaign, you know, even though during the election campaign he did trail Mark Carney when it came to the preferred prime minister tracking, he was much more competitive. And you know, maybe the message for Pierre Poilievre is, if you want to be competitive, get in the news, be proactive, and be that counterpoint. And you know, for Andrew Scheer, he's got to cede the territory and the response to the government more to Pierre Poilievre, because, you know, Pierre Poilievre is not in the House. He's going to go to a by-election. You know, Canadians will be wondering not whether he can win the by-election, which he will win the by-election. It's, can he be competitive with Mark Carney? And Carney right now is a political steamroller.
It is interesting, though, because I will say, like, Mr. Poilievre is doing a lot of press conferences. It's just a different dynamic in the House, as you point out. Like, there really isn't, there's no substitute for, especially because of his own performance there, which was like a big part of his persona. There's no real substitute for getting him in there.
And you know, this was part of the Liberal strategy. You know, the Liberal strategy during the campaign was, you know, steal all the policies from the Conservatives. Right. And run on personality and experience.
Right.
And, you know, we're still seeing that with a government that is focused on business, focused on the economy, focused on jobs, a Liberal government that wants to build pipelines, right, and is committed to energy projects. And
you close your eyes, you kind of feel like you're hearing a Conservative government at times.
You know, so Pierre Poilievre not only has to get back more in the news and to be proactive, he needs to somehow define himself as different and relevant to the national dialogue. So what is he bringing to the table on that front?
And what about the timing of this? Again, like, I go back to my original question to you, which was like, there were weeks after the election where that impact wasn't felt, where they were still neck and neck. Is it something about the throne speech, the king's arrival, that cemented things for Carney?
I think there was a bit of a period right after the election where, you know, not a lot was happening. But you go from the throne speech, and then you go to the premier's meeting, the meeting with the premiers, where, you know, did any of the premiers say anything negative about the Prime Minister? Like Doug Ford,
No, they gushed.
All of them gush, including the Premier of Alberta, the Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia.
She didn't gush, let's say, but she wasn't mad.
No,
Yeah.
but so you have leading Conservatives, people who are leading individuals in the Conservative movement and party in Canada, actually saying nice things about Mark Carney. That's not good for Pierre Poilievre.
So just to be fair here, we're at a very early point in this government, and in particular, we were talking earlier in the show about the prospect of a deal with the Americans, and what if that crisis fades? Plus, all the stuff he's announcing will kind of come home to roost. At some point in the budget, we're actually going to see how this stuff will be implemented. It will be a much different sense, I think, of accountability. What do you think of that timeline? And you also have some evidence that the Trump thing is not as big a deal to people anymore.
Yeah, the focus on the concern about Trump and the U.S. relations has been on the decline. But you know what, Vashi? We looked at remember the polling numbers before Christmas? We thought this was over, and we were talking about, Pierre Poilievre measuring the drapes for 24 Sussex. Well, I think it's a little too early to count Pierre Poilievre out. But, for Mark Carney, the one thing about Mark Carney is that there are very high expectations for him. Canadians want to see action. The polling suggests that he probably has until Christmas to deliver, and if he doesn't deliver by Christmas, the numbers could turn. And, even just approving a pipeline, that is no easy feat.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to be easy. So
let's
see how he delivers. And I think for a lot of Canadians, even for those that supported the Conservatives, they're probably willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though they don't like the Liberal Party of Canada, and they will wait to see whether Mark Carney can deliver.
On the expectations, he set very, very high himself, right?
Oh, absolutely, with timelines. So will he deliver late? Will he deliver on time? Or who knows what?
Okay, Nick, thanks so much. Nik Nanos is the Chief Data Scientist and founder of Nanos Research.